All right. Welcome, everybody, to a return to Audie Murphy's Law after a small hiatus. We finally gotten settled in here in Florida, I think. And tonight is going to be a good episode. We have Ally Rod Riguez from Boston, Massachusetts. She's going to correct me here in just a second, but I'll let her give you her job title and all of that. It's going to be a really good show. A little bit later than we usually run, but without further ado, hi, Ally.
Hello. Hi. How are you?
I'm good. So, thank you for taking the time tonight. I know we got to bullshit for a few minutes before we actually jumped in here. Doing a little bit of a later episode, which is perfectly fine with me. Actually, it worked out better. I'm not trying to cram anything around. So, just a quick rundown on what we do on our show typically is we will very briefly talk about what branch you were in, what your job was, and then we quickly segue out into life as a civilian and what that looks like for a prior service person. You have a very unique perspective on this based on your job that you have now. And so, we're really looking forward to being able to put some of this together and hopefully not bore you with some of the questions that may pop up here from some folks. But so real quick, you're not in Boston, but you're around Boston?
Yes.
Okay.
So I am Ally Rod Riguez. I am the Director of Veteran Services for the town of Foxborough. If you know anything about football, it is where the Patriots play, right down the street from Gillette Stadium. So we're about 30 minutes from Boston, 30 minutes from Providence, Rhode Island, smack dab in the middle. Beautiful little town.
The judge has the show. Is that the same place? The
Capriati or some? Yes, yeah. The little Italian judge. Yes, yeah. Providence. Yep.
Gotcha. Well, you were right in the middle of everything then.
Yeah, fantastic. 3.5 hours to New York City, 6.5 hours to Canada, 2 hours to New Hampshire. I don't know, Massachusetts. I love Massachusetts. I love living here.
I have never been there.
We should remedy that.
All over this place and have not been to Massachusetts. Interestingly enough, I don't know that we can finish this podcast because I'm a Giants fan. And
okay, well, it was nice knowing you.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, and see you later. Merry Christmas.
And it's interesting. So completely unrelated to everything else, I ended up a Giants fan because when I was a kid, we didn't really have a team. And then we moved to Michigan. My mom's from Detroit. We did the Lions and all that, but I was a huge Lawrence Taylor fan, so I stayed being a Giants fan. Having never been to New York City, thinking my entire life that the stadium was in New York City, it's not. And not until I got in the Army and I ran across some guys who lived in certain other parts of the country that were close there. And I'm like, well, shouldn't you, like I had some guys that live in Pennsylvania and I'm like, shouldn't you be an Eagles fan? He's like, no, we're closer to the Giants or the Jets and I'm like, well, that geography doesn't work for me.
Right. But, yeah. When I run in, because like, oh, where are you from? Nobody knows Foxborough, right? Or like Taunton, right? The town I live in, like, oh, Boston or south of Boston. Oh, you're a Southie? No, because there's South Boston.
Yeah.
And then there's south of Boston. So I'd say I'm south of Boston. Because if you're South Boston, then you're a Southie. And that's a whole other thing. So south of Boston.
Is that the movie with Ben Affleck? Or those guys were Southies, right?
Yes. So Good Will Hunting and all how do you like them apples? Yes. So actually, fun story. They filmed a scene at the L Street Diner. When I was in high school, I had enlisted in the reserves and I was going to do the split option. Then I decided I wanted to go active duty. So my reserve unit was actually right down the street from L Street Diner. So we used to go and have lunch, and they had like a little section off, like, oh, what's his name sat here, and he's like, big deal, whatever. But yes, that's cool. The neighborhood in which I am acquainted with. Yeah.
So when was that? So when did you obviously you skipped over the split option and went active duty? So when did you do that?
So I graduated 2002. That summer I was supposed to ship out, but I injured myself because I was lifting weights. I like to lift weights, like not anymore, but I was like gung ho. I was like, I'm gonna knock out the push-ups, and I busted out my shoulders, so I didn't actually leave until 2003. So June 11th, 2003. I was in Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Relaxing. Got it.
Relaxing, Jackson. Yep.
Yeah. So that's something I think that's unique. You know, the Marine Corps has the Hollywood Marines and then Marines, right? They only have that one delineation between them. And the Army always has, there's a nickname for something everywhere. In when you move into AIT, the conversation then becomes, well, where'd you go to basic at? And then depending on what you answered,
is your level of credibility, like what kind of a horse soldier are you, right? Like, oh, you went to relaxing. It wasn't that relaxing. Listen, South Carolina is hot, okay? It was June through August, South Carolina. I turned 19 in basic training. And let me tell you, every time somebody wished me a happy birthday, it was 19 push-ups. And then my drill sergeant just got so tired of telling me to drop that I just, for the rest of the afternoon until dinner time, was just stayed there. And they'd be like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, it's my birthday. Oh, happy birthday. 1, 2, 3. And I'm like, oh my God. So that was my 19th birthday. Oh.
Yeah. So I went to Fort Knox, and unbeknownst to me, when leaving for basic, that was one of like Knox and Benning were the two that were like, if you went there, you were somehow more of a soldier than any of the other ones, right?
I hate that competition. Like, it's just, why do we do that? Like, I just did a TikTok the other day. Somebody asked me, why do veterans feel the need to disclose their percentages? And so I made a reply video, and that is a good question. Why do we feel the need to tell people our percentage? Like, it's some type of bragging rights, and it's not, right? Like, I don't tell people, because then, like, now you know how much money I'm bringing in. Plus, you can calculate how many dependents I have and husband and kids and all that. Like, that's none of your business. If you are, like, I don't go around telling people like, oh, I have type 2 diabetes and, and I have high cholesterol. We don't do that with anything else except for our percentage. Why?
And I don't know. And I think, so let me back up for 2 seconds. And I always ask the question because there's a difference between the pre 9/11 vets and the post 9/11 vets. There's a mental difference, I think, and there's obviously a blurred line that exists there, and probably a year or two in either direction. But a lot of guys that I know were served in the 90s and got out before I even graduated high school, right? And so they didn't live in the same world that we live in, right? But they still have that the want to be recognized for their service, as they should. But that almost that sibling rivalry, that pissing contest that exists all across the board still exists even for them, right? And these are guys, and not to discredit them in any capacity, but a lot of them never saw combat, never deployed, never whatever. But the same also exists for post 9/11 vets too, for a lot of them. And so it's a weird machismo thing that exists for service members. And then it's like, once we get out, it's like, well, what can I talk about? This is what I did when I was in. And you take somebody like me, I was a quartermaster, right? So by MOS, I shouldn't have gotten into any shit. I shouldn't have been in combat. I shouldn't have been doing dumb people shit. Like, these things shouldn't have happened, but then they did. And so, like, I'm always competing with the combat arms guys who, in fairness, probably have more combat time than a lot of them, right? And I say a lot of them, my generation of them, right? Or equal to, somewhere in the same realm, but I'm a quartermaster. And so, I think once you get out, then it's like, well, this is how fucked up I am. How fucked up are you?
Right. And it's funny because the level of percentage is not indicative of mobility or level of fucked upness, right? It's for math purposes only. And so when I get a lot of young guys, especially now within the last 2 years, whatever branch, I automatically assume that they have deployments. So, I'll, ask them all the questions, blah, blah, blah. How many deployments? Because I'll see like infantry, or I'll see, MP, or, 88 Mike, truck driver, whatever. And I'll just automatically ask, how many deployments do you have under your belt? And when an infantryman tells me none, right, they're almost like quiet about it. They almost whisper it. They're like, oh, I don't have any. And I'm like, okay, listen, dude, I'm not here to fucking judge you. Like, I'm here to get your percentages. Like, you don't have to see combat. You don't have to deploy to have post-traumatic stress, to have an accident happen. Because let me tell you, when you walk into a barracks room and you see a fucking battle buddy swinging from the rafters, that's fucking post-traumatic stress. That's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. You don't have to be in an IED explosion to suffer post-traumatic stress, right? And I wish the veteran community would stop with that. Like, oh, he didn't deploy, he's 80%. You have no idea what that veteran did stateside or in Korea, in Germany, Japan, to warrant that 80%. You know, like I that's what, that's one thing that I really just dislike about the veteran community is the competitiveness. And like another thing, because I don't sugarcoat anything. Like, you're either going to get a lot of followers or you're going to get a lot of hate for having me on your show. And I'm sorry if it's the latter. The whole 22 a day. Okay, let's talk about 22 a day. One, I've said from the beginning, it is way more than 22 a day because they don't count vehicle collisions. The DOT counts that, so it's not counted as suicide, even though there's, he never fucking hit the brakes, still not counted as suicide. It's a vehicle collision. Okay. So I've always said it's more than 22 a day. And recently the VA came out and they said it's closer to 26. And I'm like, boom, there's, Ally's right again. But that whole like, oh, I'm going to do 22 push-ups. Motherfucker, you tell me what 22 push-ups a day has done to save your battle buddy's life. Are you picking up the phone? Are you sending an email? Are you knocking on the door? Are you ringing the doorbell? Are you taking him out to lunch? Are you buying the guy groceries? Are you buying his kid diapers? What are you doing to ease that veteran's life just a little bit so he doesn't put a 22 in his fucking skull? The 22 push-ups a day, I hate that, right? And the ones who like, oh, I'm going to do it. They're the ones who are online saying, oh, you're a pogue, kill yourself. That boggles my mind.
And I've even seen a lot of your TikToks where the comment section has been those guys saying some really just obscure shit. And you're just like,
nope,
okay. And you just kind of, I think we've become, as frustrating as it is, you become almost numb to it and accustomed to it to a degree. And, obviously it doesn't have any impact on me if somebody says something like, and I have no qualms telling anybody I'm 90%. But none of mine are mobility issues, right?
You're welcome.
So when they see it, they're like, "What do you mean? What do you mean you're 90%? That's like almost all the way fucked up." And I'm like, no, it is, but by numbers, but not in what's actually going on, right?
Correct.
And then you see guys. I have buddies of mine that were Green Berets who can't even fucking stand up straight, and they're at 30%.
Right. So like, we should remedy that. They should call me. Let's see what I can do. But and it is unfair.
One guy in particular that I'm talking about, you want to talk about a dude. I mean, he was 27 years in total service, 22 of those years as a Green Beret. Like, you want to talk about somebody who's seen some shit and you want to like sit down and have a drink with that dude. And all he wants to talk about is Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. And, he's a nerd and and that was something that, the movies don't show you, right? Is those guys who live in that very isolated, very tiered environment, most of them, it's an intellectual space for them. It's not a, let me see how many push-ups I can do space.
Right. They're very, very intelligent.
Yeah, you have to. And so there was always this joke at Fort Campbell, because obviously being the 101st, that trumps the reputation of anybody else on that base, right? So any ancillary outer liar units. So we had 5th group there, and the guys from 5th group, you'd see them ruck marching on a Tuesday because they wanted to, but they're all these like pot-bellied, short, just you're looking at them and going, this the dude?
Yeah.
But we also had the 160th guys on Fort Campbell. And so there was such a weird dynamic on that base. And then
I love the 160th guys. I love them.
So that was my sister unit. So when we flew pink teams, so I was in an Apache battalion. So when we flew pink teams, the other side of that element was our Apaches and their little birds. So we did a lot of operations with 160th in theater and out of theater. So when I first got into veteran services completely by accident.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how I got into veteran service, and I'll tell you. My husband gets blown up. I'm on the way to the police academy. He's working for Riley County Police, waiting for my academy date, and I'm like, I want to be a cop. Like, this is what I want to do. I have a degree in cybercrime investigation and criminal justice, and like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to catch these pedophiles and child porn freaks and just take them down, right? Because I can't think of worse scum than that, right? Like, that's just the low of the low for me.
Right.
Is kitty diddlers, right? So I was
I have never heard that statement.
never.
No. Jesus, that's a good one.
So so that's like the bottom of the barrel for me. So I was like just gung ho, full of piss and vinegar, was gonna take him down. And then my husband on his 4th tour gets blown up, comes home paralyzed, all this stuff, and I'm like, well, I can't do that. And we had children at the time. Well, I still have children, so I left that, went back to school, got more degrees. Moved to Massachusetts to work at a Fortune 100 company. So I was their security coordinator. So I did that. I loved my job, hated corporate America. Not for me. And just I had this awful human being of a boss, just cynical and just very blatantly racist. And I was just like shook at how this guy is still continuing to operate. Well, because he brought in the client money, and so they're just going to turn a blind eye. Sexist, and and the worst part is he was a veteran also. He was a Desert Storm veteran. I was just he left such a bad taste in my mouth. So one day I very publicly over the radio told him, my badge is on my desk, go fuck yourself. I quit.
Right.
So over the radio, the loudspeaker, everybody heard it. I cried all the way home because I was running a team of 90. I didn't get to say goodbye to anybody. It was like an on the spot. So I came home. My husband was like, what happened to you? I'm like, I quit. And now I'm like, holy shit, now I have a mortgage. I have car payments. I have 4 kids. Like, what am I going to do? So I walked American Job Center, and I said, hey, I'm a veteran. Is there any services for me? The old lady was like, yeah, go talk to the crusty guy in the back. So I walked back there. Sure enough, this old retired lieutenant colonel, his name's Jack McKenna. We are great friends to this day. I adore this man because he is the reason I am in veteran services. He's like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I have no idea. I'm like, what do you do? Like, I think I can do this. You sit behind a desk, you work for the state. I'm in. And he's like, you would actually be a very good DVOP, Disabled Veterans Outreach Program Specialist. I said, okay, there just happened to be a position open in Plymouth. So I applied, worked for the state for 2.5 years. And one of my clients come in, and I'm, he just got out of the Army. And he gives me his 214, and I'm sitting there typing blah, 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 blah. Wished him well, have a good day. So as I'm looking, I see 160th, and I'm like, oh my God. So I sent him an email.
Oh my God. It's amazing.
I know. And I'm like, I put 160th. And he's like, it was a very interesting time of my career. And that's all he said. And I'm like, no, I need it no more. And then so I got to know some of these other guys. But that's how I got into veteran services. So after I was a DVOP for 2.5 years. I worked with the VSOs. And Foxborough came open, and the Plymouth VSO says you would make a great VSO Foxborough. I'm like, I don't want to work for municipality. I don't do the politics. Right. Black is black, white is white. Like, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. Like, that's not for me. And they're like, Ally, you would do so good. So I look at the income, and I'm like, well, it's like 2.5 times what I'm making now for the state. So, all right. Beat out 65 other applicants. Boom. Been with the town of Foxborough since January 2nd, 2019.
So that's an interesting thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is, so every VSO that I've ever run across prior to meeting you was an unpaid volunteer VSO.
Yeah.
And now I will say that my experience with those individuals was
awful. Yeah, you can say it. VSOs are trash. I am the first to tell you. I really dislike VSOs, but here's why Massachusetts VSOs are so fantastic. We're the only state in the entire union that has a veteran service officer in every city and town. By law, by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 115 states that every town will be represented by a VSO.
Really?
We're the only state in the entire country to do it.
So what is there requirements for you to be paid? Like,
yes, because
the reason I say it that way is, again, everyone that I've ever run across, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of people, because look, most military guys come from, you leave the New England area, most guys come from small towns or small-ish towns. They don't come from these major metros, right? And statistically. And so when we got out, we moved back to Rockport, Indiana, which is where my wife is from. And it's a town of like 12, something stupid. Like, I'm exaggerating to prove a point, but
15.
The guy who was the VSO only did it on Tuesdays in his free time, maybe.
Yeah, that's absolute horseshit to me. I can't. And I didn't know there was such a need until I got on TikTok. And I have a map on my wall of every state I filed claims in. And really? I'm like, oh my God. Like, I didn't know it was so bad. Because here, like, so Massachusetts actually leads the way in veterans benefits. It's not Texas. We have a program here called Chapter 115, where if you are an indigent veteran, we will pay your mortgage or your rent, your prescriptions, co-pays, Medicare, like everything. We pay all of that. Again, we're the only state in the union that does that. If you're 100% service connected, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts will give you $2,000 annually just for being 100%. That's it. Just like, here you go, $2,000.
What's the cost of living where you're at?
I'm sorry?
What's the cost of living where you're at?
It's not as high as you may think.
2,000 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house.
So I live in a 3,000 square foot, 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom home on just shy of an acre. My mortgage at 2%, I pay like $1,770.
Yeah, I'm moving there.
It's not as high as people think it is. I mean, they call it Taxachusetts. Our state is like 6.25%. I think in Kansas is 8. So yeah, it's not as, I mean, our roads are shit. I'll tell you that. Our roads are trash. So
So that's my wife. She said, "Are you trying to move?" 6.25 is low. I mean, so in my line of work, we do property insurance claims. So we are always looking at the tax rates for each individual area. 6.25 is low.
Yeah, it's not bad.
That's crazy to me.
I think it's 8.25. Either way, it's less than 10. It's very. I mean, our cigarettes. If you buy, so you can't buy menthol cigarettes in Massachusetts anymore. You got to go to the Rhode Island or Massachusetts. Can't buy menthol cigarettes. And
so I smoke menthol, so I won't be moving.
Me too. I used to smoke. I haven't smoked in years, but I used to smoke when I was in the Army. It was Marlboro menthol lights. That was my cigarette of choice.
This story is going to sound incredibly racist, and it's not. So
thanks for the disclaimer.
I learned very, very quickly that depending on what race you were, dictated the cigarettes that you smoked when I was in the Army.
So I learned that too. Yes.
Yep. And black dudes loved menthols, but
Newports
had to be Newports. Yep. So I had smoked menthols prior to joining. But I always smoked Marlboro menthols, or, if the gas station or shop was out, I would get Newports, right? And as soon as you pulled that Newport pack out, they were like, "Hey man, can I get a Newport?" And so I figured out that I didn't have anybody bumming cigarettes off me because nobody smoked menthols except for the black dudes, but they only smoked Newports. So I didn't have anybody bum off me if I smoked my menthols, but didn't have. So I would buy Doral or Doral, however you pronounce it. I would get Kentucky's Best menthols. Like
they're terrible cigarettes. Yeah.
Just because I didn't want to have to stand out in the smoking area and then have 20 dudes come up and bum cigarettes off me.
Yeah. Like, I learned to smoke. I learned to smoke from like cigars. Right. I started with cigars, and then you can't have cigars in the Army. You can't stuff a cigar. So I quickly switched to cigarettes, and it was Marlboro menthol lights. I didn't like the Marlboro menthols, but the menthol lights. Eventually I switched to the Camel Crush, like where you crush the tip and you get the, and then you go to the field, and I ran out of cigarettes, and I'm like, shit, what do I do? So I learned to dip. It was awful. Oh, it made my stomach turn. I got so sick. I was like, I was throwing up on the sideline. It was awful, but I got my nicotine, so it's all.
It was the first place I had ever been around a woman chewing tobacco. Was in the military too, and you'd walk around a corner and you'd see a chick with that hog leg in, and you're like, "What are you doing? That doesn't look right."
Yeah. Listen, I mean, we had a mechanic in Fort Sill. I was in a maintenance battalion, and we had a mechanic who was from Podunk County, somewhere south, right, like Alabama or whatever. And she was this gorgeous little thing, but she was just as fucking tough as, like, she was all man except for how she looked, right? Mm-hmm. And she and I became really good friends. And her name was Sheena, and I don't remember her last name, but her name was Sheena, and she always had a big, and I'm like, Sheena, why don't you just smoke? And she's like, I don't want to smell like that shit. And it was always, and she would eat and drink, and and I'm like, well, damn. And I could never do the whole like can thing. my finger my finger was too stiff. So I was like, I couldn't do it. So I just started, continued to smoke. But
well, and then, that was the only opportunity that a lot of depending on what you were doing, the 5 minutes to go smoke a cigarette was the break that you got, and if you weren't a smoker, you were still stuck in there doing whatever it was that your unit was doing that day. And, it's always funny when you look back at the little things that you experienced and encountered when you were in that you don't experience anymore, right?
You kind of miss it, right? Like, I mean, it was bullshit at the time, but I kind of miss it a little bit, like I definitely miss the camaraderie. Like, I definitely miss that. And that's the thing. And I hear, like, my stepson is serving, and and I told him, like, Alex, enjoy it, man. Like, I know it's bullshit and you're freezing and you're missing holidays, but I'm telling you, when you get out 5-10 years down the line, you're gonna miss it. Like, this is the time of your life right now, my guy. I promise. So we'll see.
Especially everybody tells you that, like, high school is the time that you're gonna
high school
have your best memories ever.
No. Horse shit. Maybe for people who end up working in corporate America, right? Like, maybe they peak in high school, but I think those that served, like, it's unbelievable. My first, because my parents are immigrants, right? So I grew up overseas. And I was very sheltered, and joining the Army was my way out, because my parents have been training me to be a wife since I was 5 years old. And I'm like, I'm not going to marry some freaking greenhorn, which is Portuguese, at like 22 and be a slave and cook and clean. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. So my only way out, and I wasn't ready for college, my only way out was the Army. So bye, I enlisted at 17 because my mom wouldn't sign. So I had to do the reserves, turned 18 and, signed active duty. And it's literally built my foundation. I think as successful as I am today, definitely my education. Thanks, GI Bill. Thanks, vocational rehabilitation. Like, where else would I get 2 bachelors and a master's and not spend a dime? Because of, my military service, my leadership skills, like my resiliency, my tenacity, all of that, my problem solving skills, like, it's rooted in my service.
I think one of the biggest things for me was, I look back now and all the times that I remember being stressed and thinking, God, there's just so much going on, and I'm just overwhelmed and whatever. Like, I look back at that now and I'm like, yeah, no, I'll go back to that tomorrow. Like, if the opportunity was there, I would go back to that level of stress compared to, because the military does do a really shitty job of getting you to understand what real stressors for real normal people look like, right? Yours in the military, they're very on again, off again, right? Where if you are in a position where you struggle to pay your car note or your mortgage or put food on the table or whatever, that is a consistency problem. It doesn't just go away, right? Even if you solve the problem, there is a window of time before the problem is solved. And so in the military, you always had the necessities. It was just all the other bullshit that you had to deal with, right? And so when all of the sudden you're no longer in the service, and for somebody like you, somebody like me, and a lot of other folks, our entire adult life was the military for up to that point that we got out. And so then all of a sudden it's like, well, I need a job that pays X to do this so I can feed my kids and I can put gas in my car and do all these things. Now, that, don't misunderstand that to the E2, E3s who go and finance a 25% Dodge Charger and they blow through their money marrying a stripper on Saturday. Like, mismanagement's mismanagement, no matter how you want to shake it.
Correct.
But they could still go to the chow hall. The barracks were still there. Like, they weren't going to die. Right.
Yeah, they had options. And as a civilian, you don't. So there's a thing, because I used to work for a nonprofit in between working for the state and corporate America. I was there 3 months. And it was like good intentions, bad judgment. My heart was in it, but everything else, the stress was unbelievable. So there's this thing called the cliff effect, where you don't make enough money to survive on your own, but you make too much money for state assistance. or, you know, nonprofit assistance. And I didn't know that thing existed until I was doing homeless veteran stuff, housing. And I was like under bridges and in like crack houses, like begging these veterans to come and see me so I can get you help. And they're like, they make too much money. I'm like, he can't even put food on the table. What do you mean he makes too much money? And it's just, and I'm like, I can't, like, I will never work for a nonprofit again. Because it's just awful. It's like, oh, we want to help, until you actually call. Hey, I got a guy. Oh, nope, sorry, we can't help.
Yeah.
I'm like, shit, you like, I can't.
Well, and unfortunately, a lot of times for nonprofits, there's so much red tape into what their goals are, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, when you look at throttle therapy for us, for me, Jonathan, and the other couple guys that, and you know, our intention is very, very simple and it's very vague, right? So we're not ever in that position where we have to get state approval for this, and like we're not playing that game, right? So there is an avenue to exist in that space, but then also for what you were attempting to do, or at least be a part of something positive, there's so much red tape there that prevents you from actually being successful and able to do that. I struggle, though, I will tell you in full transparency, I struggle with, you know, you hear all the time, you know, these people are like, well, this congressperson this congressperson that, and they want to be like, well, we should take their salary and get rid of some of these homeless vets. And, you know, that just tells me that you can't do simple math, right? Because the amount of that person's salary compared to the amount of what you would consider homeless vets, we can give them all a bag of nickels and tell them thank you for your service, and that's all we're ever going to accomplish, right? There's got to be at some point a solution, but
nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows what it is.
And so when you go to, is like panhandling and stuff legal where you live?
It is, yeah.
Okay, so there are a lot of places that you cannot, right? And you don't see the influx of the homeless community there, because they're going to go where they can stand on the street and get people to give them money for whatever it is. And, you know, some of those folks get reserved to, it's kind of Stockholm syndrome, right? They get reserved to well, I can stand here and I can make more, a couple $100 a day, which is X amount of dollars per year. And I'm willing to deal with these things to have these things, right? And it seems and becomes the norm for them. And, you know, one of the things that I think I struggle with across the board when we look at that type of conversation is that you can't help everybody, and not every problem requires a response and a solution. So
I struggle with that so much. Even my kids are like, Mom, like, why are you sad today? And it's like, and they're like, you can't save everybody. And I'm like, but I want to.
Right.
But I want to, right? Like, somebody has to. Like, I don't know how it fell on my shoulders. Like, I'm on one person, right? And like sometimes like I get overwhelmed with TikTok and Instagram, because there are I have answered, like, no shit, close to 3,000 messages. I can't even tell you how many claims I have filed, because like there's such a need, and it would help if VSOs weren't shitty. But I just got a text message from our good friend. Crazy story how you and I have never met. Excuse me, right? We've never met, and yet we are so connected. So Jonathan just sent me a text message, and he says that he can't find the show. It says canceled. So I don't know how you're broadcasting.
If he's looking at it on LinkedIn,
it
wouldn't. So this streaming platform won't allow me to, once it's posted on LinkedIn, I can't edit it. And so because we didn't go live at 6, it canceled it. Yeah. It's only LinkedIn that does it. It's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, but only LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so how would he watch live?
He can go to the Audie Murphy's Law YouTube channel.
Go to Audie Murphy YouTube. Okay. All right. So
send it to him while we're.
Yeah, Jonathan is one of those people. Like, I cannot say enough good things about him. I absolutely, with like my heart and soul, love this man, right? And we met in South Padre Island He was there as a keynote speaker. I was invited by the Texas Commission, Veterans Commission. I didn't know anybody except for Tommy, who does a lot on my TikTok. And so I was in a bikini because it's right on the beach and it's hot in Texas. So I'm walking, I'm like, oh, I want to sit and have a drink. And I'm looking around, there's tons of people everywhere. And I'm like, shit, where am I going to sit? So I see this scruffy biker dude and his gorgeous girl sitting next to him. And I'm like, hi, can I sit here? And he's like, yeah, have a seat. And I'm like, oh boy, this guy's gonna like eat me alive, right? And his girlfriend, fiance now, Johnny, is just the sweetest. I love her.
Yeah.
And so we start talking, I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm from Massachusetts. And he's like, oh, my motorcycle club is from Massachusetts. And I'm like, oh, I do a lot with these guys. And then come to find out, we know the exact same people. And I'm like, unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then, so getting ready for veterans. So we maintain contact, right? I have the privilege of saying that I rode a party bus with Jonathan Hill, right? And I have photos to prove it. And we stayed in contact. How are you? How's Johnny? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, shit, what am I going to do for Veterans Day? And so I put it out on LinkedIn. I'm like, anybody know a guest speaker? And he's like, hey, you know somebody. And I'm like, oh my God, Jonathan, if you would do that, like, I absolutely. And he did. And just, I'm still getting text messages and phone calls about Veterans Day. He just knocked it out of the park. And it wasn't even like, he was just him. He was just him, honest. It was funny. He was like, I shared and I asked if I could share his citation and, what he earned the Silver Star for.
Yeah. And look, I mean, obviously he has a massively specific event, right? That doesn't truly define his 20 plus years of service. And I remember my very first conversation with him, we went to an Infidels get together and I was out smoking. My wife, Amy, was standing there. We were talking. We were like, really don't know. We knew a handful of people there, but we really didn't know a whole lot. And he comes over. He doesn't say a fucking word to me, lights up a cigarette, and he stands close, but doesn't say anything to me. And after about 5 minutes, I would look over and I'm like, hey, I'm Daniel. And then he just kind of said, yeah, I'm John. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we dispersed, and then we met again in the smoking area, and then we struck up a conversation, and we had a bunch of conversations. And before he left Texas, I talked about trying to find a way to help him in transitioning between things, and tons and tons of respect for that dude. Like, absolute amazing person, been through a lot of shit, and
he just exudes just like respect, like just badassness, right? Like he's just, I don't know, like kindred spirits. I adore him with like every fiber of my being. And I was hoping Johnny was going to come up, but she didn't, because I guess she didn't have a baby, but her daughter had a baby, so she's got a grandbaby. Like, and so I got to find a way to get down there, like just take a weekend, because they don't make him solid. Like, as Jonathan is as solid as they come.
Right.
Period.
Tell him that I sent him the link through LinkedIn. There he is. Bam. He's in there. He just posted.
Oh, there is. Yeah.
See those? Okay. I just found out in my last show that the guest can also see all these comments.
Yes.
I didn't realize that you guys could see them until I clicked it. I thought it was just for me. And somebody had said something real fucked up. And I was like, hey, man, I didn't know you could see those. So
there's the private chat that you and I can see, only us. But then there's the comments where everybody else can see it. So on Monday nights, I have the same platform I do From the Ashes Radio. It used to be called the H Train Show, but there was a little problem with stolen valor and pinning yourself a Purple Heart. Let's not get into that. So I let... Do you want to know that story? So Joel Hunt, okay. You need a camo guy. I am a camo guy.
So
I am a camo guy.
And I did my second deployment together, and he was our camo guy. So that's how I was able to call home. Him and I were really cool. So I would sneak up there, use the nipper, call home at 3 a.m. when he was up talking to his family. And so we will circle back to your thing here in a second. So we do, for a few years there, we were doing a kind of reunion with the guys that I did my first 2 deployments with every year, and then COVID hit and a bunch of other shit. So we've been trying to get one back together. it just hasn't worked with everybody's schedules. But anyway, so go ahead. Stolen Valor. I
love
Stolen Valor.
So this one's good, right? And he's all over the news, right? He's a Paralympian. He skied in Sochi, whatever, in Russia for the U.S. ski team. Purple Heart recipient, got blown up, paralyzed, right? So I'm like eating this shit up, right? Asked me if I would do his radio show. I said absolutely. I'm not charging. I'm like on my own free time. So we start doing it for a while. Next thing you know, I get a text message. And it's an article about him and Stolen Valor, and like my heart sank, and I'm like, what? And I'm reading it. So I call the producer of the show, and I'm like, what is going on? And he's like, we have lawyers involved. So basically he pinned himself the Purple Heart. He wasn't in an IED explosion, and it all came about because we asked somebody to edit the show, like graphics and stuff. And she says, no, I served with this guy. He's a piece of shit. I'm not doing it. And I'm like, what? So then everybody started coming out of the woodworks. Like, this is why he can't get ahead, because he's telling everybody that he did A, B, and C and nothing. So then there was a news article about how this nonprofit organization, Forgotten Heroes at Home, if you deserved an award but the DOD didn't sanction it, they will give it to you. So basically he got blown up. No, he didn't. So he took pieces of everybody's story saying he got blown up. He didn't. He was never paralyzed. So that's that. No traumatic brain injury, no none of that, right? So me as a VSO, I call him up and I said, hey, this is before the Stolen Valor. I'm like, do you want to come to Veterans Day? So last year I paid him $1,000 to come and speak as a Paralympian, as a Purple Heart recipient, right? All this stuff. None of it was true. Well, Russia was true. He went there. But then even Russia, the US was like, your story doesn't add up. So they, kicked him off the team. I'm like, unbelievable. So I'm like, well, what do we do with the radio show? Because it's internet radio and we have literally thousands of followers across the globe. So we shut down for a bit, and now it's From the Ashes Radio. We completely removed him, the name, everything. So he's looking at prison time because he used his Purple Heart status, which doesn't fucking exist because it's not even on his 214. It's not sanctioned by the DOD to gain monetary gain, right? So so it's a whole mess.
About that. And here's my
Oh, there's so much. So Stolen Valor, I can tell you, Daniel, all day long. I served 10 tours. I got shot 7 times. I was there when we found Saddam. I can say all of that, and it's not Stolen Valor. It's not. When it becomes Stolen Valor is when I'm like, oh, guys, I went to this nonprofit organization. I deployed 17 times, and I got shot 5 times. Can you give me money? That is Stolen Valor. When you lie based on your military experience to gain money, free anything, then that is legally Stolen Valor. But I can tell you tons of war stories that I hear. I got a bunch of good ones. Sure. They're not mine. But veterans tell me things, right? Because I pull it out of them because I want to know what we're going to file for, right? I can tell you stories all day long. It's not Stolen Valor until I gain profit from it.
The Stolen Valor shit is as frustrating as it is. Like, I'm only frustrated about it when it's somebody who actually served and then they make shit up. Right. It's like there are fucking people that served with you. Who inevitably are going to catch wind of your story. There was like that dude that was on American Idol or whatever it was a couple years ago, or he's on The Voice or whatever, one of these fucking talent shows, right? And he was, I can't remember which one it was, but this dude was like talking about how he deployed and he was a Silver Star recipient. And
Tim Poe?
It might be. But the dude got on national television telling these bullshit stories. And then the people that he served with came out of the woodworks, like this motherfucker got court-martialed or whatever it was.
Holy shit. See, I didn't know any of that. I don't watch TV. I haven't watched TV in years.
So, what?
Yeah, I don't have any TVs in my house. I have none. No. Huh. Do you see my library of books behind me? Like, I read. I don't.
I think my wife would be that way if it wasn't for Live PD and all of the Chicago fires and Grey's Anatomies and all that.
I don't watch any of that. Yeah.
But anyway, so it's another conversation to have when it's somebody who never served and they're like standing on the street corner trying to with the sign that says disabled vet need money.
Yeah.
That guy doesn't even bother me. That doesn't bother me one fucking bit, because that guy needs something. He's pulling at people's heartstrings. You shouldn't believe a word that he could tell you he can do one-handed cartwheels all day long. You should never believe it. Right. But when it's somebody who served, and everybody embellishes, right? Service members all embellish to a degree.
Right. The fish I caught was this big, but I say it's this big.
There's a line, right, where it's no longer even remotely close to what happened, right? And I don't talk a whole lot about my service. I have 4 or 5 little stories that I'm willing to kind of put out to the public. But outside of that, I don't talk about a whole lot of stuff unless I'm talking to people that I was in service with. Right. Or other service members. It's almost this tiered system, right? Like, you served with me. You weren't in the military at all. You get these. You were in the military, but we didn't serve together. Okay, you get these. And then, we were in shit together. Okay, you get these.
Right.
And,
yeah, exactly.
That's a hard one for people who are in our lives to understand, though, a lot of times, too, is that it's like, well, why don't you want to talk to me about these things? Well,
you don't understand.
There's a myriad of different reasons.
Right.
And I always, when I'm having a conversation like this with people, I always roll back to my dad. So my dad was a corpsman in the Vietnam era, right? So when I went to war the first time, I remember coming back and wanting to talk to him about it. And he never really said a whole lot about it. And then went to war again. And I was like, okay, like we have commonality here. We can have a conversation. Still wouldn't talk to me about it. And I remember going to my mom and saying, why the fuck will he not talk to me about something that we have a comparable interest in now, right? We've both been through X and whatever. And all she ever said to me was, your dad remembers what it was like for him, and he didn't want you boys to do that. And he was scared to death when you joined. And I joined prior to 9/11. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a weird space where, even though people served and they may not have served together, that doesn't justify the want or desire to want to have a conversation about the shit that may or may not have happened. Right. I just always told Amy when her and I first met, I said, I just don't ever want to walk into a room and somebody be like, that dude's been through some shit. Like, I don't want to be that person. Right. I want to walk into a room and people know that I have a level of confidence to walking into that room. Sure. But I don't want them to be like, this dude.
Yeah, that guy's fucked up. Yeah, like that's like, and I get it. And I love dealing with my Vietnam guys because they are just so hard to crack. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to toot my own horn here. Toot. 9 times out of 10, when I deal with a Vietnam veteran, they leave my office in tears, like happy tears, because I just have a conversation with them. And like, they're like, I just want to file for hearing loss. And I'm like, were you boots on ground? Yeah, I did 2 tours. I'm like, motherfucker, you did 2 tours in Vietnam and all you want to file for is a little bit of fucking ringing in the ears.
Just got this thing.
Yeah. So let's talk.
Different generation though. They had to be tougher than our generation.
Yes. And it pisses me off that they never got the welcome home, right? So the Massachusetts put out like a 50th anniversary book or whatever, and I give them the book and I give them a free little pin that says welcome home, and that's it. And the fucking tears, and I'm like, it's a pin, right? It cost me 10 cents to make, but it's the sentiment behind it. And so now my kids know that when they see somebody that says Vietnam vet, they know to go shake their hand and say welcome home, and that's it. They don't have to say anything else. Where did you serve? Or my mom's a VSO, or nothing else. Just welcome home. That's it. And it just fucking kills me that our own government, our own country did this to its own people, right? So, like it just
and my dad being that in that generation, I always joke with him, and I think again this kind of rolls back to the very beginning of our conversation. There's always this kind of pissing match, this like
who had it worse,
ribbing each other, and I'm like, well, it's you guys are just clogging the fucking system up at this point. Like you guys just need to move on. He's like, fuck you, like, and that's the end. But like, because I joke with them, I'm like, if you walk down here, because all the World War II vets are deceased now. I think the last one passed. Is there still a few left? Okay.
Oh yeah. There's
Really?
several left. Oh yeah, I have one. I have one left in Foxborough. When I started in 2019, I had like 12-ish. I have one left.
Okay. So, and then obviously the guys who did the Korea War, completely the forgotten ones, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yep.
and then big skip up to Vietnam, and then nothing really until Persian Gulf. And so I always give my dad shit where I'm just like, you just wander the halls of the VA and it's all the dudes in the Vietnam veterans hats. And every once in a while you'll see an old World War II veteran hat or a Korea. And Navy guys love the hats more than anybody, I think. Because it has their ship on it, whatever, and I'm like, you guys aren't even being seen for shit that's service related anymore. And he's like, it's because we're all fucking old.
Right.
Like,
it is. Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
But I just, it's a friendly conversation between him and I. We're just talking shit.
Sure.
Because I'll be that person in another 30 years, where
we will be those people.
Yeah.
We absolutely would be like schlepping down the halls of the VA, like back in my day, right? OIF veteran, and and it's, oh God, like I don't even, I don't want to get old.
No,
I don't want to get old.
And the downside to that is, our generation's war was completely different. And exclude the Persian Gulf, but like the Desert Storm, our generation's war was completely different than the Korea War, the Vietnam guys, World War II. Like the idea of isolating down the 1-year deployments in the Army and 6 to 8 months in the Marine Corps, whatever they did. The idea that we got to go for a year, come home for a year, go for a year, come home for a year, go like that. From the outside looking in, that looks like it would reduce some of those things, right? The suicides, the PTSD, all that. You can, I think, make the argument though that it made it worse because there's a transition period coming home that you're still mentally there. It's almost easier to just have stayed there.
Stay. Yep.
And so while everybody's like, man, I can't imagine, being gone for 3-4 years at a time. And it's like, I can imagine that because once I was there, once you've become accustomed to what the fuck is going on,
you're there.
And
right.
Regardless,
and you're spending the whole year, like when you come back home, you're spending the year trying to process and decompress. Meanwhile, you have this lump in your throat or in your gut. Like when's the next time I'm coming on orders? Like, is it coming soon? You're always like anticipating. Like that's no way to live. That is no way to live. Like and then I wonder, like I put myself in their shoes, like what is worse? And I think, and it's not even worse because both are shitty situations.
Yeah.
Jungle warfare or the shit we did in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like, would I rather fight in the jungle or would I rather fight in the streets of Baghdad? And I think both are pretty shitty.
Yeah. And again, being military people that we are, like there's that again, but being in the desert is kind of shitty because of this. And but being in the jungle is kind of shitty because of this. Like it still always exists, but you're right. I mean, given the option between two pieces of shit, like you're still getting shit regardless of how you want to look at it.
Right. You're still getting shit. Yeah. I don't even know how we got on this topic, but it's
I don't know how we got there.
It's your fault.
Oh, we're talking about Stolen Valor. And shit.
Stolen Valor. Oh yeah. So the radio show.
Yeah.
So every Monday, they film or they broadcast out of Colorado, 6 p.m. their time, 8 p.m. my time is when I'm on. And
this is a normal time for you to be occupied.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'll bill you later though because it's outside my work day. Yeah, no, so it's really good. From the Ashes Radio, they do so much. Like Monday we had Gunny Claus, so in his like Toys for Tots stuff. So so Gunny Claus was on.
This is how dense I am as far as like the Marine Corps thing. I looked at the uniform. I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen that one, and then I kept scrolling. And then I was like, hold on, let me go back. And then I read the caption. I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Okay.
Jonathan, I was told by a loved one that while I am here physically, my mind was still in combat. Every veteran and every spouse that has married a veteran can tell you that's an absolute true statement. You're here, but you're not really here.
I think so. I mean, obviously you and I talked at length about my service, and I did 4 tours, and I hope that I don't think I've ever posed the question, but I hope that Amy doesn't feel that way. Like that, I know that I get off in my own head a lot of times, but I find my places to do that. It's in the first thing in the morning before anybody else is awake. I'm having my coffee and a cigarette, and that's my time. Or at night after everybody's gone to bed, and I know, hey, this is a night I'm not gonna be able to sleep, right. So I'll sit out there.
Yep.
I hope that my wife and my kids don't ever see that. And both of my boys are, you know, my oldest is at the point now where he's asking a lot more questions.
Yeah.
Because he was alive for the last two. My youngest was not alive for any of them. So for him, we have two completely contrasting perspectives of what dad did. Right. And so for my youngest, he's like, well, I know you were in the Army. I know you were a soldier, but like, what'd you do?
Well, that's my youngest too. Like the other three were around for all the deployments and the PCSs and all that stuff. My youngest was born after he came home. He was in the WTB and he retired. And so he doesn't, you know, he knows mommy and daddy were soldiers and we were in the Army. We did this, but he doesn't know. And so when, well, ex-husband now, when he, you know, was transitioning and he was at Walter Reed and everything that comes with coming home and just, it was just, oh my God, it's just so much bullshit. And I had to explain that, you know, to my son, like, okay, daddy did this and mommy did this. And, you know, daddy just thinks differently. And, you know, daddy still loves you and daddy's angry and it's not your fault. And, you know, he's not angry at you. You know, he's got some things that he's trying to, you know, and I'm like, it's fucking exhausting. It is fucking exhausted. And I think I have like this vantage point where I'm lucky enough to have been both the veteran and the veteran's wife. So I get it. If he wants to talk about shit that he did, I got you, dude. We are fucking battles. I got you. But then as a wife, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go cry in the shower for the next half an hour because I don't know how to help you. I don't know how to fix you. Right. So it's hard, but be honest with your wife. If you are having a shit day, fucking tell her. Be like, listen, I don't want to be around you or the kids right now. I'm fighting some inner demons. I'm okay. I'm just going to go fucking smoke a cigarette in the back porch. Like, because that was the thing with like in my ranch, there's no communication. So I'm always like, what did I do? What didn't I do? Like maybe dinner wasn't good. Like, fuck, dude, that is exhausting. And so anybody listening, man or female, if you are a combat veteran, please communicate with your spouse.
And it took Amy and I years to figure it out. We've been married for 11 years and 11 and a half years. And the first 5 or 6, we didn't communicate worth a fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just news, right? Like exchange of information.
Okay, you're mad. I'm mad. What are you mad about? I'm just mad because I want to be like, and there was just, there was never any deeper understanding or explanation as to why. Right. Like, why are you in a fucking mood today? Fuck you. Okay. And then it was about the 6 or 7 year mark where we had a real big kind of knockdown drag out. And we decided at that moment, we are no longer going to, I'll get to that comment in a second. So where we said, you know what, we're actually going to talk through these fucking problems because we're not doing this anymore.
Right.
And having those open and transparent conversations, as uncomfortable as they are a lot of times, because, you know, you wore both hats, and it's hard because you do become, you live in this space where you have to be desensitized to a certain amount of shit. And so then when you have to show sensitivity or you have to show
vulnerability,
it becomes kind of an Achilles heel for you. Right. And I always told people it's harder on the spouses than it is the service member. Our life's pretty easy, right? With the exception of a few, whatever traumatic events that you had to live through. Those are isolated events, right? Where for the spouses, they're at home, they're wrangling kids who miss daddy or mommy, they're paying bills, they're trying to figure out, they're fielding all the questions from the family members. Have you heard from them? What's going on? Is he okay? Is she okay?
Yeah.
There's so much of that where when we deploy, we are left kind of in the lurch of all of those things. Like, we don't have to deal with them. Water bill I don't have to make sure we got paid the water bill. I don't have to pay the cell phone bill. I have to survive this, whatever it is. And then I get to go and decompress for 30 minutes, 3 days, whatever it is, till the next mission, and then do it again. right? And now, obviously, there's exceptions to that. I spent a lot of time, and I know Jonathan can attest to this too. When you're living in a combat outpost, not a fob, the dynamic is completely different, right? And I know you and I haven't dove way off into where you've been, what you've done, and not that we need to, but when you live in a space where you're isolated, you're constantly in a state of stress, right? But you don't have anywhere to convey that stress because everybody around you is dealing with stress, right?
So we're all stressed together.
You're doing one of two things. You're all going, yeah, this sucks, and it all sucks, or you're finding ways to reduce that stress. So then it becomes the ribbing of each other, the talking shit, the fighting, the whatever that it happens, right? And so it's always interesting. So, but I'm going to circle back to this comment. So James Strange said, not at a soccer game. So
did you have it out with Amy at a soccer game?
Oh, we did. We absolutely did. And it was great like us. And again, we openly communicate, and we generally can pick up when the other one's frustrated and not have a conversation in public about it. And so our youngest was playing soccer. He's playing goalie, and he was not playing well. And so I was yelling at him from the sideline, as soccer parents do, right? And apparently I was being a little too aggressive. And Amy said, hey, leave him alone. And I was like, or I don't remember what I said. I said, go fuck yourself, or fuck off, or don't.
Damn, you went from like 0 to 90, dude.
No,
like
I was already mad.
Right.
And then she came over, elevated. And then she said, and then it escalated. And she's like, how about you go fuck yourself? And no, fuck you. And then like, so now we are 30 yards apart from each other, screaming profanities. And James was at that game watching our son play in the middle of it. As we're like, if I'm confident, because Amy will hit you like a man, like that's who she is as a person.
I love that.
And like, she would have whooped my ass if she would have chose not to walk away. Right. Like
I mean, you kind of deserve it. I mean, I don't typically take sides,
and I was the catalyst in that situation, and also very unlike me. I'm generally even keeled. I don't get up or down especially in a public forum.
Sure.
If I'm having those conversations with somebody, most of the time it's a joke, right? We're just kind of living in that space. And it's usually reserved to other people that were in the service. Cause like Sanchez, I could be like, fuck you, you piece of shit. And he's like, well, fuck you. And then we're done.
But it's like, I don't know. I don't want to say like it's out of love. It is endearment. You know, when I call you a motherfucker or a piece of shit or, you know, a cunt or whatever, like I know that I love you.
Word?
Oh, it's my favorite word. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love that word. Yeah. Listen, if the shoe fits. My guys always knew.
Yeah. My guys always knew if I said something that sounded endearing, they were in trouble. So if I was like, hey, hero, come here. Like they knew that they fucked up. If I said something like, hey, motherfucker, come here, like they were like, hey, what's up, Smart? Like,
yeah, right.
You know? So it's weird. It's backwards land. Everything in the military is this weird minutia of just shit all the time.
Yeah, it is weird, but it
works.
Yeah. It does. It's like, you know, when you get out, you're like, like Army Navy games coming up, like, you know, fucking squids. Because my brother is Navy, right? So my brother is Navy and I am Army. They stationed him in Nebraska. So I was in Kansas and he was in Nebraska. He's like, I joined the fucking Navy and I'm in Nebraska. I'm like, should have gone Army, right? Well, whatever, because I'm in Kansas.
Buddy of ours that was in the Coast Guard that got stationed in Owensboro, Kentucky.
Like why like who hates you, right? Like who hates you? So like we'll talk shit about the branches, like fuck the Space Force, right? Like that's not even a real branch. But the minute a civilian is like, oh, Army guys, you know, just join the Army because they can't get into college, and it's like, whoa,
right?
You have no fucking right. Like,
you don't get to tell me.
Like, let me see your boots, right? Like, who the fuck are you know?
So obviously I was in the Army. My dad was in the Navy. My brother's a major in the Air Force. Amy's brother's a major in the Marine Corps. And then her oldest brother was a sergeant in the Marines. He got out, and then now he's in the Army. I think he's in the Guard. But he's an E6 in the Guard now. But like we are covering the spectrum.
You guys like a poster of like military family service.
And so there's always this thing because, you know, especially with her oldest brother, it's that once a Marine, always a Marine. I'm like, but not really, right? Because your shirt says Army on it.
Yeah. Bazinga, right? Yeah. Like, oh, I think I'll say, oh, were you a Marine? Oh, I'm still a Marine. All right, guy, you served in like 1945. Relax, right? Like, you're here because you can't even wipe your own ass. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, so relax, guy.
Well, and it's funny you said the Space Force because one of the guys. So I was a retention NCO for one of the years that I was deployed, and also super shitty fucking job when you're deployed, and you're like,
retention.
You want to stay in? And they're like, no.
Like, no, sorry, get me the fuck
but
out.
They have these really big bonuses, you know. And so one of my guys, he was an E4, and we had just promoted to corporal, so he was an NCO, and we got him a job as a UAV operator when the Army first started their UAV program. Now he's an E7. He is the head of the UAV standardization program at Fort Rucker. And they are a subsidiary of the Space Force. They're the only Army contingency that is part of the Space Force. So he has the cool kid like Klingon badge and shit.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I was like, all this because, and he was a prior service Marine, got out, joined the Army as a fucking fueler, got stuck like all of us did. And the reason I say it like that is because our cutoff score was 798.
Yeah. Mine was staying 798. Yep. It'd go down to like 780, and then all these people would make the list and whoop, right back. I'm like, fuck, dude.
So ours was 798.
Point system.
I had 780. Dropped to 783. Promoted like 5,000 fucking E5, E6, and then that bitch jumped back up to 790.
Always.
So, but anyway, he transferred out, ended up making E7, and now he's but he's part of the fucking Space Force. He called me, he's like, so I have this thing, and I was like, what the fuck is that? And he's like,
that's cool though. I mean, but they're called the Guardians. I mean, look, I'm low key kind of jealous.
The kids love it.
I know, I'm a little jealous. I have a Space Force coin that somebody coined me, and it was. Yeah, so his niece is an astronaut, like legit astronaut with NASA, and somehow she's associated with the Space Force, and I guess she found me on TikTok, was like, oh, uncle, do you know her? And he's like, yeah, it's the town next over. So he came in and coined me on her behalf, so that's cool.
Really cool.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I wish I would have kept up. We have gone over our hour, but we're fine. I never kept any of my coins.
You didn't?
No. So there was a window of time where and my dad probably has a lot of them. I would come home from a deployment and be like, I got all these coins.
Yeah.
And then one of my, Amy is my third wife. My first wife threw away a bunch of my shit when I was deployed, coins and shit included. And then my oldest son's mom did the same thing when her and I split. A lot of shit went missing, and so
that's awful. I'm sorry.
It was now to commend my wife a little bit here. When I said, "Hey, I want to build my shadow box," and I looked at the price to build one, and I was like, "These motherfuckers are expensive." And she said, "Yeah, but you don't have anything else. Like, do this, get this done." And so now I haven't. But
I like this wife of yours. I like her
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
She has put up with my shit for a really long time. And we joke because she is officially, and it's been a couple years now, but she has officially passed the longest standing relationship in my life. Like she
Good.
is.
Like keep it that way, right?
Yeah,
like every day you beat your own record. So
yep. Every day she's back in the top spot.
Yeah.
So, but she come from a family, and James is right. Wow, look at my wife getting all this love.
Look, that's a sign of a good woman.
She is the polar opposite of me. She is organized. She will fight you in the street for no reason. Like me
too. I gotta meet her. Like I gotta I'm gonna friend request her on Facebook.
I'm a pacifist, And she's like, no, punch him in the face. And you're like, all right.
Yeah, no, like that's me. So like I had to pick up a second job because like I'm recently divorced, right? As of yesterday, right? Yesterday I went from like Mrs. to Miss officially. Yeah, officially. And so I picked up a second job because while my kids go to their dad, I'm like, the fuck am I gonna do? So I bounce at a club, right? And I'm like ready to just punch all the time. I'm always ready to fight. And I think because I don't fight enough, it's like this, like, because we were fighting in the military all the time, combatives all the time, PT like all the time, like I have all this pent up energy and like anger, like for no reason. Like it wasn't a bitter divorce. Like we're friendly, you know, we co-parent our son, like, so it's not like, oh, I fucking hate the son of a bitch. It's not like that. But I just want to fight. I just want to punch somebody in the face all the time.
So I told it. So as we're riding the strong women road here, when Amy and I got together, my ex-wife and I could not have a conversation without like it getting to that point where it was like, you know what, fuck you, and it just like everything was an argument. For the first 3 or 4 years and even to this day, it reduced amount, but for the first 3 or 4 years, Amy handled every bit of kid exchanges, Christmas presents, all that shit. She would call my ex-wife and be like, hey, we'll be there at noon. Like I would not talk to her because we couldn't have a civil conversation. And she just stepped up and took it on the chin all the time.
Well, it typically takes a woman to just get shit done.
I think there's posters and everything all the time.
I mean, right? It does. It takes a woman. I'm telling you.
But I told her when we moved here to Florida, I was like, I'm going to find a boxing gym so I can get back into something. Like people don't realize a lot of times that especially when you're in the combatives and all of that, they're like, that's such a massive stress relief, you know? And, oh Lord.
I like her.
but they don't realize how much, especially in a deployed austere environment, right? I remember I used to have guys that, you know, I could tell you're around everybody enough, you can tell when something's just not right.
Sure.
And sometimes they just don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit that their old lady had a train ran on her on a Tuesday, like whatever it was. And we say that because those things happened, right? And so I would just go be like, hey, go grab the gloves. And we'd just go a couple rounds and they'd be like, thanks, Dawn, I needed that. And then they'd go about their business and that's it. You know, and you don't have that. You can't come into work here where you're at, anybody's real kid job, and just be like, hey, can I punch you in the face for like, 10 minutes? Because you know, people don't like to be punched in the face.
I know. I flipped my desk. I've been in veteran services unofficially almost my entire adult life, like out of the military, officially 6 years now, 4, 5, 6, almost 7 years, right? I've had HR come in my office, and I have my own office. It's the back office, further away down the hall, away from everybody. I've had HR down the hall, like, Ally, we can hear you. I'm like, close your door then. The fuck you want me to do? Like, you don't deal with the shit I deal with, right? And there's only one time I've actually flipped my desk. Female called me, found me on TikTok. She called my office and she was stationed in Guam, and there was something wrong with like her balance. It was her feet, which then went to her knees, which went to her hips, and her column was all jacked up. So she couldn't stand. She couldn't stand up, right? So she kept going to the doctor, and this Navy doctor looked at her, and I got so, and I'm getting heated just thinking about it. Looked at her and says, I don't understand why you're so worried about this. You should be home raising kids.
No, fuck.
And I'm like, and I flipped my fucking desk. I'm like, are you shitting me? I mean, I was making up languages at that point. Like, I don't know the shit that was coming out of my mouth. And she was crying, like devastated, because she just wants to stand. She just wants to work. She just wants to serve. And this dude is telling her, you should be in the fucking kitchen barefoot and pregnant anyway. I wish a motherfucker would. I wish a motherfucker would tell me that I belong in the kitchen. I mean, I can cook. But dude, like, I'm just, I don't get it.
Well, you have to see in your line of work, and especially now that you, just out of curiosity, how many people follow you on TikTok?
As of today, I think it's 79,200.
That's
And I'm not posting every day. Like I'll go a week without posting. Like I was
Mhm.
in Aruba, then I was like mostly dead. So I don't post every day.
What was the thing? Because I had sent you an email on my claim, and
Oh,
then
I said I'm away. Like I'll talk to you when I was in Aruba, I think, right? Or
yeah,
was I
and then
sick?
later that day, I saw on your Facebook, you're like 3 fucking days. I just need 3 fucking days in a whatever, and I was like, oh fuck, okay.
It wasn't.
And like,
I do remember that, but it wasn't for you because it was nonstop. Like
oh, I'm sure.
I had to put an auto reply on everything. Like I just need like 4 days with me and my kids on a beach. Like let me get shit faced, right? Like we're not driving anyway. I went for a wedding. Just let me get shit faced. Let me relax. But no, it's like and 5 o'clock on a Friday, hey, I'm homeless. Motherfucker, you knew you were going to be homeless on Monday. Why are you waiting till 5 p.m. on Friday when there's nobody still left in the office, right? Like, this is not an emergency. I'm sorry. Here's $100, go to a motel. I'll figure it out on Monday when I get back from my vacation.
Yeah.
Like, I need, and I've had to set boundaries. Like I don't answer messages on the weekends anymore. Usually after 7-8 o'clock, I'm done. Like I can't because it was so much. And my boyfriend's one that said, he's like, you do too much and they expect it because you are right there. They ask a question, you are right there giving the answer. Now that's their level of expectation. I'm like, well, shit, motherfucker's right. So I don't. So I've had to step back. I will get to you when I get to you.
Yeah. Well, and again, and then the reason I ask about the TikTok followers is because that's 80,000 people, not including the algorithm-based people who see everything that you post, right? And so if you're sitting there and you're like, I can't get my claim moved, I don't know what to do, whatever, and somebody like you pops up, which is how you and I met, I was like, oh, hey, I even showed Amy, I was like, hey, this chick like knows her shit, and I'm going to send her a message. With zero expectation that you'd ever respond because you're, a viral, whatever you want, influencer or whatever.
Influencer. It's just I don't influence shit. No, and what happened was, oh shit.
But you have to get so inundated with.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, like
it's too much. Every question that you have, I've already made a video about it. How do I start? There's 17 videos on how to start your VA claim.
I saw today.
Exactly.
Don't start it anymore. Here's this.
Yeah, like and veterans, sometimes veterans can't get out of their own way, and sometimes veterans just don't want to do their due diligence. And I'm like, I can't do any more for you. I cannot make it easier. Whatever question you have, there is a video on it, from denials to life insurance to adding and removing dependents to filing an appeal to tinnitus versus hearing loss and how they're two separate diagnoses, to sleep apnea, to secondaries. Literally, whatever you have a question on, I've already made a video to it.
Have you made a video about what did we call my shit? Pyramiding? Waterfall?
Pyramiding. Yes, pyramiding. Yeah, waterfalls. Cute. Yeah, pyramiding. I made several on pyramiding. So like it's whatever you need. I have made a video. Just veterans just want to be like, well, how do I, just because they have that expectation that I'm going to answer. So now I don't, and I let other people, and like I monitor the comments. If something's like blatantly wrong, I'll just delete it. But I have like 5 raters. I have a bunch of people who work for QTC, VES, and LHI, who feed me information, but they can't expose themselves. So, and I would never ask them to. So they're feeding me information like, hey, like when I made the video about how when you go for your comp and pen exam, be careful about how you present yourself, right? Like the examiner, you're there for range of motion and neck pain, and the examiner's talking to you and they're walking the room. And what are you going to naturally do? You're going to naturally follow them. Well, what you don't know is they're actually checking your range of motion, because once they put the ganometer on you, you're like, oh, I can't turn. Bullshit, because you were just following her. Right? Or they drop the pen, natural reaction. Oh, I'll get that for you. Boom. You just demonstrated you have full range of motion on your back. Right? So I'm presenting these videos because they are trained. These are coming from QTC doctors who said, listen, this is what we are trained to look for. So I'm putting that information out there. You just have to watch it. Like I don't ever take myself seriously, guys. Like I know like these dancers are stupid. Like I know, but it got your attention. It got you to stop, right? And then you're like, oh shit, maybe Ally knows what she's talking about. Like I'm more than just a pretty face, you guys. Believe it or not, I'm kind of intelligent. Like I kind of know what I'm talking about, right?
Barefoot and pregnant.
Yeah, barefoot, pregnant in the kitchen.
Yeah. Well, there's another gal on TikTok, a little redheaded girl, and she does VA loans. She does
Ariel Best. She is my TikTok bestie.
Yeah, she's legit too. Like,
she is some hot shit. She actually helped me with my refinance, with the mortgage, with the divorce.
Really?
And she calls me and she's like, who do I need to fucking knock out, Ally? Because I can tell you're in a mood. And she is fantastic.
Where's she from?
North Carolina.
I was say, because I've heard her speak and I can't figure it out. You know, because there's certain areas of the country, obviously. You can be
North Carolina. Yep.
Yeah. So like one of Amy's brother's wife's from Connecticut, but they have a very, unbeknownst to me, I think she's from Connecticut. Anyway, they have the New England accent. And so she says
a little bit.
Yeah. But for somebody who doesn't have it, it seems like a little bit. Right.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I always, every time I run across something that says like car keys, and it's like, it shows a pair of brown pants or it shows a pair of car keys, they're like, which one is it?
Yeah, car keys. Yeah. So I used to have the New England accent. It used to be like, well, because I've been here since 2014. Right. But if meeting somebody like, oh, where are you from? And I'm like, well, I grew up kind of, I don't really have roots, like half Massachusetts, half in the Azores. Google the Azores if you don't know where that is. Right. But when I enlisted, it was like Army, Air Force, water, car, you know, like retarded, right? So that's how I spoke. And then it was bad. Like, what are you, retarded? Like, how do you? Yeah.
There's some of those. There's some of them that are they're golden. Like the whole that was that fucking the Hyundai commercial with Smart Pack.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like Ben Affleck's brother did one. Like, I know what you drive, guy, and guy, like I know where you live, guy, and it's like, oh my god, like we really do fucking talk like that. We really do. And then I've been so far removed from it. I go back and I'm like, no wonder the rest of the country hates us. Look at how we sound.
It's so aggressive. I actually literally had an argument with a man this morning from New Jersey, and.
Why?
Well, so again, property insurance claims, right? So his words was, it's a simple water claim. Nothing in our world that involves water is simple. Yeah. If water exists in a property claim, everything's fucked. It might as well be on fire. And so he was like, it's just a pipe that busted behind the wall. We cleaned it up. I don't see the problem. Why is this taking so long? And like his accent was so just like, it was so thick, this Jersey, and all I could think the whole time was Jim Tan Laundry, because there's certain parts of the world, certain parts of the country that have that dialect, and you're just like, fuck. And he was so mad, and the more mad
Jersey Shore guy.
Yeah, the more mad he got, the thicker it became.
The worst, yeah. So sometimes when I'm like super angry, I will revert back to Portuguese because it's my first language. So it just comes out, and my New England, my Boston accent will come out too. Because it's kind of actually Jonathan. Our dear friend Jonathan mentioned the accent in his keynote speech on Veterans Day. So nice. It must be a thing. It must be a thing.
You can hear it. And again, it's when you're around it all the time. Like
you pick it up. Yeah. If I'm really like there's one where somebody had commented that their VSO asked, this isn't an MST claim, is it? Which just pissed me off. And I replied it, and watching the video back as I'm answering the comments, because the video keeps playing, I'm like, holy shit, my accent really did change. It was like, you fucking kidding me? And I'm like, oh my God, I sound like that? That's awful.
Well, and so like, I don't feel like I have an accent at all. My mom's from Detroit. My dad's from the north, in Peoria, north of Chicago. I was born in Tennessee. I don't have an accent at all, at least in my opinion. My wife from Rockport, Indiana, sounds like she's from so much farther south than I have ever been in my life.
Really?
And you're like, where are you from? First time we ever talked on the phone, I was like, where'd you say you were from? She's Indiana. I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Indiana. But she's one of those, like when she's had a couple drinks, the accent gets a little, fuck you, Sanchez. Sanchez is Puerto Rican from Chicago.
Let me tell you about the Puerto Ricans I served with, okay? My Sergeant Major Rivera, I love this dude to death. Friday, we used to get the whole battalion together, right? And the Sergeant Major used to give, stuff, and we'd say the Soldier's Creed and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. Nobody wanted, and he used to pick soldiers out of the crowd, like, hey, give me, your whatever. And we all used to hide because we couldn't understand him. Mm-hmm. And it was never soldier. It was Soya. Hey, Soya. Hey, Soya. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, what? My maiden name is Tavares, right? Tavares. Tavares. Mm-hmm. It can be Hispanic. It is Portuguese. The Puerto Ricans thought I was Puerto Rican. The Dominicans thought I was Dominican. The Mexicans thought I was Mexican. Right. I'd fit in everywhere, right? So I'm like, nope, I'm Portuguese. I know I'm white, but, I speak Spanish, speak Portuguese, whatever. Yeah. So he would always call me Tavares. And I'm like, what's he saying? I'm like, Sergeant Major, what'd you say? Soya, Tavares. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't understand this guy at all. The worst accent. I'm like, Sergeant Major, how many years you been in the military? Oh, I've been in the military 32 years. And I'm like, 32 years, and you still can't say soldier? Like that? Yeah. Yep. And on the radio, be like, you're coming in broken and Hispanic. I don't understand you.
Have you seen, there's a dude, his Facebook name's a combat veteran, and now they're doing like a stage show.
He was at Riley with me. Yeah.
Really? Okay. Yeah. So there's a Puerto Rican dude, and they do a skit completely around that, about like all of the things, like give the block of instruction from a Puerto Rican NCO. Like, yeah, it's a thing.
There's a couple of TikTokers who do the Puerto Rican NCO with the Puerto Rican dad, the Latino dad.
Oh, that guy, I know exactly what guy you're talking about.
Hilarious.
Like he's always talking about the Hispanic dad talks the sneakers, and he's like the Reeboks.
Yeah.
The statement at the bottom, and you're like, God, it's so good.
And it's
I know people that sound like that.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, we'll just wrap this thing up, Ally. It's been great. I appreciate you taking the time, and I will be scheduling a meeting with you at some point to figure out what the hell to do with my claim. So,
my pleasure. Yeah.
Nothing service connected. It's all.
Send me a copy of that letter. Find out the reason for denial.
I've got all of that now, so I'll get with your girl and schedule an appointment with you. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time tonight. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you so much. You do good things, Daniel.
Well, thank you. We're going to circle back, and we'll probably have you on again at some point. I'm going to try to get Jonathan on. I need to reach out to him and have a conversation. We've had a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I really want to do it. And then when it's like, hey, it's Thursday at 6, and they're like, oh, well, it's sunny, I can't do it. Like, all right. Like legitimate reasons, cool. I'm all about it. But like, I
appreciate you. Like we've rescheduled so many times, and I am so sorry. It's just like, I didn't expect to be mostly dead. And then Aruba was happening. Like, thank you for being patient with me. I know we switched back and forth, but I'm so glad. Like this is important to me. I wanted to get it done. You are important to me. Like we had to get it done.
This will be the first show that when I get done, my wife won't go, you just talked the whole time. It'll be the first one where there was actually a time where I wasn't speaking the most. So, all right, have a great rest of your night. I'm going to kick you out of here and close this thing up.
All right, you guys, take care. Be good to yourself and to one another, please.
There you go. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Thank you for jumping in tonight and watching an hour and a half of this shit tonight. So, yeah, that's all I got. It's late. I'm going to go home. Thanks for watching.